Wow, November was absolutely crazy in terms of reevaluation in the stock market. I mean, we're talking about the government shutdown with no reports coming out, basically, where information on unemployment rate, financial data, the price of commodities, grocery prices, all of that and more, just not in the market. So the market was sort of, just marching to the beat, kind of assuming everything was going okay during the shutdown. And all of a sudden the September data comes out, the October data just gets completely canceled. At first there wasn't even include the unemployment rate, but then they just canceled the report altogether. And a huge, large correction occurred in the stock market to readjust to some of the new information that was being provided. And then following that, you have the AI reassessment. You are looking at some investors like Michael Burry, who's known for shorting the housing market in 2007, 2008, basically betting that the housing prices will go down right before the recession, the housing recession, as portrayed in the movie The Big Short. Michael Burry goes out on X and starts talking about essentially how AI, in his view, is something that needs to be reassessed, and he views it as to be overvalued. He has different reasons for it, but essentially one of them he goes to explain is that all these large AI companies, which are mainly tech companies that have transitioned to AI, at least those are the ones that are being referred to often as AI companies. So we're talking about Meta, Amazon, Google, all those sorts of companies. I mean, there are some organically AI founded and IPO'd companies like NVIDIA as well, which apply to this. But all that to say, we're looking at these companies, and a lot of times he's seeing that they're sort of passing the buck to each other. So for example, Google could be investing, getting servers with Amazon, which could be borrowing something from NVIDIA, which could be getting something from this, which could be something that. So they could all be purchasing from each other. And then what ends up happening is that when only a few or a handful of companies are just purchasing from each other, the question is the value really going up with that news? Or are they just sort of passing the buck from one person to the next, to the next, to the next, and so on. So where the balloon appears to be growing bigger, but it's just more air. There's nothing actually in the fundamentals that are changing between the companies and their valuations. So that was one of the things. The other, looking into the debt, a huge amount of debt that's going into borrowing to create all this infrastructure, the clouding systems, and all the necessary components for the AI infrastructure for the demands of the future. And some questions about that in terms of that. I mean, NVIDIA did end up later towards this month releasing its quarterly earnings, and it settled a few concerns, but there are some other concerns about its inventory, some other things, related to it. There's a lot of those sorts of reassessments, and people are kind of looking at, oh, are these AI companies really at the level which they're being valued for? I mean, we're looking at 40% of the valuation of the S&P 500, which is the top 500 public companies in the United States, and essentially 40% of that value is coming from these AI companies. So almost half the market, sort of roughly speaking, is being propped up. So with that in mind, the question is, are these valuations that are collectively being valued in the trillions, are they really valued at that high? Are they really being correctly measured based off of proper valuations or off of this sort of hype? And that kind of goes into, I think, having the right information in the market, and having the more one broadens one's perspective on the world, the more use one can gain. That brings me to one of my organization, Art of Next Gen, which helps provide and coaches people to get international experiences. So they have upcoming fellowship that I'm trying to train people for at the United Nations. I spoke there this past July. It's a great opportunity for people who want to gain international experiences. We also have there's conferences coming up in Azerbaijan and other things that I would like to help coach people for. The fellowships, the majority of the fellowships that I offer coaching for, I also try to help people gain scholarships or funding for, to be able to attend in terms of the lodging and accommodations. So if you are interested in trying to broaden your global perspective, and gain some experiences on a maybe 3 to 5 day conference overseas, and meet a great community of internationally minded individuals and peers, and get a great experience, feel free to follow up with me at artofnextgen.com and learn more. Now back to the market. What we're essentially looking at here, broadly speaking, is this reassessment that's occurring. And oftentimes what happens in the stock market, and this is in my view, individuals have information or they collect information, and based off the information and their personal experiences, they are able to input into the market on what and contribute to what they think the price of the market should or could be by participating. So one person puts in this price, one person has a different background, maybe their engineer has this price, one person on a business background does this, one person who's in a background in something else does this. So you have all these diverse perspectives about the information publicly available in the market, and these diverse views oftentimes have what I would refer to as deviation, so like standard deviation. So they might have a point of accuracy, but maybe they're being overassessed in one side, or maybe they're overassessed. Maybe someone might have overestimated the rate of this technology being adopted, and maybe someone had underestimated it. Or it could be, this could vary through different sectors. Maybe someone overestimated the implications of this news, and maybe someone underestimated it, right? So these deviations, what oftentimes happens is when multiple people participate, these deviations can cancel each other out, which is really good because that essentially means that it can approximate an average price, which can generally be fluctuating, but approximating an average price that the market collectively feels the company is worth. So even though one individual may not have set that price or understood that price, the collective market has approximated it. That's the nice potential of the market, and that's really good for understanding the nature of the economy and goods and supplies and the health of the market. It's extremely useful to be able to see those measurements. However, when the market is overestimating certain information, then it can result in the market not approximating the value of that company correctly, or rather in alignment to the actual valuations, because there's overestimation, a collective overestimation. And that can happen through a lot of different ways, but oftentimes that happens through individuals who are no longer participating out of assessing the information, but rather because they're joining in on the hype. So oftentimes you can have, individuals who are just, they see breaking news, it's a hot stock, they saw it on TikTok or on X, or, their Uber driver told them, man, just put your stuff in this stock, right? So you get all this sort of stuff where some individuals are not necessarily inputting the pricing of a stock with added information. They're just putting it either with added error or with someone else's deviation, someone else's standard deviation of error. So they're either just copying someone else's error, or they're just not contributing information whatsoever. And what that ends up doing is it skews that approximate averaging. So that ends up with a price that might be more or less. And in my opinion, that is what can potentially lead to a misevaluation in terms of value, or potentially, if continued or escalated, into a bubble. The question is here, if that is the case, or if that's occurring, if it's a small reevaluation, or if it's part of something bigger, that time will tell, at least in this specific instance or circumstance. But essentially, that is the market is assessing right now in the AI space what the actual values are. But that has left room to a lot of opportunities as well. So please continue doing research and gaining more information. I'm going to try to post, if not weekly, I'll try to do some bi-weekly posts to continue sharing information and insights. Please subscribe if this has been useful or informative to you, and I look forward to sharing more in the next video. Thanks so much.